大家好，我是旭亮。我们优视今年有一个特殊的 project 叫 Homeless Care More， 是专门针对无家可归者进行的一系列的采访和评论节目。那我今天非常有幸的采访到一个叫 Invisible People 的一个非盈利机构的创始人，叫 Mark Horvath 的一个故事。我跟他聊了差不多1个小时最后还是非常遗憾的，因为网络故障的原因终止了我们的对话。但是我从中得到了我觉得非常非常多我从前不知道的一些信息，也部分的改变了我很多对 homeless 这个事情的观念。我非常推荐大家仔细去看一下我们的这一个整个1个小时的完整的这样的一个 interview 我觉得 Mark Horvath 他所做的这个事情是非常值得大家去注意的，而且我也相信他做的这个事情是真诚的，因为他这个 YouTube 频道从建立到现在已经有差不多100万个 subscriber， 然后他的有一个视频采访一个18岁的一个 homeless 的一个年轻人，这是8年前采访的那个 video 现在已经有14个 million 的 view， 然后他这个最近刚刚更新了这样的一个这个小朋友叫 EJ 小朋友，他8年之后的生活，这个人已经不再是 homeless 了有很多这样非常戏剧化的一些故事。但是 Mark 这个人他并没有去 monetize 他这些 video， 他的 video 非常非常的多，他这样做是出于他觉得说是一种 integrity 因为他觉得他和这些 homeless 的受访者有一个约定，就是说这些故事是你们的故事，任何时候你们想把它拿下来你都可以跟我讲，我就拿下来，所以把他们去做广告他认为是不合适的。就凭借这一点，我真心相信他所做的这个事情是非常非常有诚意的。也许您可能不一定完全同意他所有对这个问题的复杂性的判断，但是我真的非常建议大家去看我们这样的一个节目。那同时我们也再一次希望说大家能够继续关注 homeless 这个问题，继续关注我们优视其他的 homeless care more 的一些视频节目，也订阅我们的频道，谢谢。以下就是我和 Mark 的将近1个小时的原汁原味的采访。What kind of identity you would like to identify yourself first? Are you
Sure.
a YouTuber or are you artist?
No, Invisible People is a nonprofit. We're the only education-based nonprofit working to end homelessness. I normally say I'm the founder of Invisible People, and I can explain what we do.
Yeah, I noticed that. That's why I want you for yourself to prioritize your identity. Filmmaker, artist, YouTuber, activist, nonprofit founder, or social justice warrior. Which one you prefer?
All of them.
Oh, cool. Yeah. What's the highest priority?
Anyone you want. I like that. I wish I was recording that intro. That was great.
That's great. And I check out your YouTube channel. It's such a huge success. I mean, for the subjects you are covering, you have now almost have close to 1 million subscribers.
Right.
And what do you make of it? Have you ever expect such a big attention on this issue or on your YouTube channel?
I am grateful. I am grateful for the audience that we've been able to build. And to be completely honest, we've been around for 12 years. And in 2010, August 22nd, YouTube gave us their homepage for a day. And we 1.6 million views, and we grew to 20,000 subscribers. And I thought that was it. I thought 20,000 subscribers was great for a nonprofit. In fact, YouTube staff even told me, that's really a large amount for a nonprofit, and especially a nonprofit that's focused on educating the public on homelessness. So I went 8 years just going along that we're doing great. And then some things happened, and I was looking at what can we do to grow and scale as homelessness is growing. We need to be able to scale to create more impact. And I looked at what we had, and our biggest tool was YouTube. And I started a Patreon account, which is kind of a crowdfunding account.
Yeah, I know that.
Creators.
Yeah.
And that is what changed. So 2 years ago, most of the growth, because I think we're about ready to hit, the subscribers are great, but it's the last year we had 137 million views in 1 year's time. That's huge.
Great. That's huge.
And if you look at the 12 years we've been on YouTube.
Yeah, give me a curve.
Yeah. I could show you a graph. The 12 years we've been on YouTube, the total is 220 million views.
Yes.
But 137 came in the last year.
Yeah.
So,
it's a boom.
Those first 8 years were great, but we're just at the beginning of something really huge. And I don't have many regrets in life, but one is that I never believed, or I didn't understand, that we could build a community on YouTube around homelessness. And we can. I mean, YouTube is a wonderful vehicle for advocacy and information and education. And we're just at the beginning of being able to tap its potential.
Yeah, speaking of your success, along with your success, maybe there's an undertone is like the seriousness or of the real problem, right? The homelessness issue has been getting worse and worse. And how could you give us an overall general impression of how serious this issue is now, like comparing to 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, or maybe even 1 year ago? Because I definitely know COVID makes things even worse, right?
Yeah. And let me state right up front, I'm scared. I am really scared of the growing homeless numbers. In fact, right now, there's 14 million households, not people, households, families with children at risk of being evicted. 14 million. And homeless numbers were growing before the pandemic.
Yes.
So adding, let's say, just another million people or 2 million people, it's going to tank the social services system. And a little background, back in the 80s, Republicans, and this is not a left-right Republican Democrat issue, it's an American crisis. Yes. It is all of us. We have to stop this division of left-right. But back in the 80s, Ronald Reagan cut $15 billion worth of funding for affordable housing. And almost overnight, chronic homelessness was created. In fact, that term wasn't even used before this funding was cut. And the mega shelters and the huge nonprofits working to end homelessness were almost created overnight as a response to the growing homelessness problem. Then in the last 5 years, rents have increased around the country 75%. This is before the pandemic. Homeless numbers were growing. It's interesting that politicians and many nonprofits want us to believe we've got a handle on it. We know what we're doing. But what's happened in many cities around the United States and probably the world is politicians focused on housing development. They favored developers of luxury apartments instead of affordable housing. And the result of that is, for example, in Los Angeles, The last homeless count before the pandemic is around 60,000 homeless people. That's probably low. It's hard to get a real official count on homeless people just by the nature of homelessness. So it's more like 80, 90,000 people, but there's 200,000 vacant units of luxury apartment buildings not being rented in Los Angeles, enough to at least end homelessness twice. So it's not so much a housing stock issue. It's an affordability issue.
And
the leading cause of homelessness is the lack of affordable housing.
And maybe disparity too, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have income disparity, you have lack of affordable housing, you have racism, foster care, a broken criminal justice system, domestic violence, mental illness, addiction. You know, homelessness is not a cause, it's a symptom.
Yes.
So when nonprofits or politicians say we're going to end homelessness, no, we've got to go upstream and we first have to fix what's causing homelessness.
Right. So how many cities have you been to go filming or interview people all those years? And could you name a few those cities which suffer the most?
Sure. And I haven't been traveling a lot because of COVID. None of us have. And so I don't have a real big update, but I stopped counting cities, around 300 cities.
Wow.
And that was a few years ago. So
wow.
I say 300 cities, 9 different countries. The Canadian government had me go to 24 cities in Canada. I've worked quite often in the UK, totally blessed, honored to be able to travel. I've been everywhere from Anchorage, Alaska to Tampa, Florida. But your question on which is the worst, I don't think there's a real good answer for that. For example, in Jackson, Ohio, which is a city of 5,000 people, homelessness is a crisis. I mean, you have the opioid addiction destroying families, there's unemployment, and they don't have the services that a San Francisco or a Los Angeles or a New York or a Tampa has. So I view homelessness as a crisis everywhere. It obviously is a little different in different cities. The Tenderloin in San Francisco is one of my favorite locations. But being honest, in the Tenderloin, there's been a severe breakdown in the city of San Francisco of mental health services and addiction services. And it's an open drug market. So you have a breakdown of criminalization or police action to stop drug dealers. And there's something about the Tenderloin, and I mean, I just love the Tenderloin. But you see humans, people in such despair, in such hopelessness, that it's probably one of the most heartbreaking locations that I visit. But, you know, as I said, whether it's a rural city or a big urban sprawling metropolis, homelessness is a crisis, and homelessness is horrible everywhere.
Yeah, also homelessness is just a word, but like your channel's description, you put there some words. It's like they're individuals, right? What you said here is we imagine a world where everyone has a place to call home. Each day we work to fight homelessness by giving it a face while educating individuals about the systemic issues. But when you mention face, I think that's why your channel pop up so significantly, huh? After all these years, what actually changed in your mind, this concept, face and faces of our society's problem. How does it really help you mission along the way, this face or faces?
Well, I mean, let's go back a little bit. So I had a great job in the television industry, and then I ended up homeless on Hollywood Boulevard. I rebuilt my life back to a 3-bedroom house and a new car in the garage and a cushy marketing job in 2008, which is very similar to the economic problems we're having now. I think now is a little worse. I lost everything again.
How old were you when that hit you? 2000?
Oh my gosh, that was 25 years ago. So I was about 35. I'm 60 now. Well, I should go back. This August, I will celebrate 26 years sober. And my last day of homelessness was August 24th, 26 years ago, this August 24th.
Yeah, you mentioned sober. Were your problems? A drug or alcohol or what was that?
Yeah, all of the above. All the above. It was, and I have to preface this. I mean, a lot of people, and this is the foundation of our work, a lot of people blame homelessness on the person, that it's their fault. They made bad decisions. Well, if homelessness was a punishment for bad decisions, we'd all be homeless. Plus, as taxpayers, we pay huge money for each homeless person that's outside. So regardless of what caused their homelessness, we need to be there to help people get out of homelessness. And why Invisible People works is, and what we do is, you know, we are the only education-based nonprofit working to end homelessness. So yes, we have a growing YouTube channel. There's mini documentaries, there's first-person interviews of over 1,000 homeless people from around the world. We're going into scripted films, there's vlogs, tours of solutions. There's a lot of different content that resonates with different people. But we also post daily news on homelessness. So if you have an iPhone, we're on Apple News. If you have a Android, we're on Google News. Open your news app and type in Invisible People, and we're there 5 to 7 days a week with original content, often written by homeless people. We also have a Learn More section where it's the only space online for young adults to learn about homelessness. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of educational content from colleges that's a 46-page academic PDF that is a lot of information for a high school student. And then there's a lot of fundraising information from nonprofits that spin homelessness to raise money. That's not necessarily a bad thing. People have to raise money. So we created the only space online for people to learn real easy about homelessness. It's our Learn More section. And last but far from least is we have an advocacy where you can contact your state and federal legislators. Click on our Get Involved, and we make it easy for you to call, tweet, Facebook, email your legislators and demand that they fix the affordable housing crisis and make fixing homelessness, make preventing and ending homelessness a priority.
I think on your channel, the most popular or viewed video, that's EJ's story, huh? That was blown up. I don't know when it was blown up, but now it's accumulated to 14 million views. And you just updated that EJ's nowadays life 1 week ago, huh? His story, I mean, what do you think? How many people can be like EJ? I mean, he's so lucky, fortunate to have somebody to assist him get out of this situation. But he himself claims that that's rare.
Oh yeah. And I also have to state, I don't recommend. EJ is probably the only situation that I know of where somebody has picked up a homeless person and invited them to live and it worked out. And sometimes it's not the homeless person that causes the problem. It's the person inviting them in that probably shouldn't have. So in many ways, EJ's story is a miracle. Now, there are nonprofits I recommend to people if you have an extra bedroom and you are open to this. There are nonprofits. There's one in Los Angeles called Safe Place for Youth. I featured on our YouTube channel, where they work with their homeless clients and somebody that has a spare room. So the homeless person has been vetted. They get services, because here's the thing. We just can't put people in a box. People need services. They need community. And for what happened with EJ was an amazing miracle. And I really believe we all have to take care of our neighbors, but we also have to be very smart about it. So if you have a spare room and you're open to this, there are nonprofits in your community that will help you, help end homelessness by placing one of their clients. I think what's really important about EJ's story is that we all must realize, the American dream is everybody, if they work hard, they can have a better life. And there's truth to that, but we all need help. So I was homeless on the streets 25 years ago, and I went from homeless to homeowner, and then back to almost homeless again into where I am now. But my path from homeless to homeowner, I could say, yes, I did this, and this, and I did, but there were people that helped me along the way. There were people that helped when I needed help the most. And I think what is so important, and if I was going to highlight one of our videos that's right in the top section, it's K-Town for All, which is a group in Koreatown of normal people, meaning they don't have training in social services. They don't work with homeless service providers, meaning they're not professional homeless service outreach. They're just, bakers and mechanics and graphic artists and normal people that are starting to take action to help their homeless neighbors. And I call them community action groups. And I recommend the video K-Town for All. Type it into Google or into YouTube, K-Town for All Invisible People, it will come up. And here's just some normal everyday people. And they're not just feeding people in the park. See, here's the thing is, we've been programmed that we feed people. And yes, some people need food, but we need to fix the reason they are hungry. So groups like K-Town for All are going out and helping people with needs like food, blanket, and tents, but they're also working to help them get out of homelessness. And how that connects to EJ's story is, here is somebody, a normal person who happened to have a spare one-room apartment, allowed EJ to come in and heal. And as citizens, you see a lot of people complain and be upset about homelessness. And I think we all should be. But some people just complain, and then others take action to make our world a better place. And I cannot stress how important it is for people to take action to make our world a better place.
You just mentioned your experience to, like, somebody helped you, right? But what's the essential part of that help? I mean, how did they help you? They give you offering a job like what the other good people offer for EJ, or what else? Like confidence or just financial support? What these essentials saying?
It's different. The thing about us humans is we're complicated.
Yes.
And when somebody is out on the streets for a period of time, they need to heal before they go back to work. They're not going to go from living in a tent in a park to sitting at a desk making money,
right,
without a period of time of healing. And that is evident. One of my most recent videos was Mona, who has she's an engineer and she's living in a tent, and lots of people were offering jobs, and that's wonderful and it's great. But Mona needs 6 months, maybe a year, maybe more, someplace inside to heal. She's been living outside for a long time. And she even says in the interview, she has mental illness and there's trauma. When you're living outside, there's layers and layers of trauma that comes on. So this idea of get a job is not realistic or practical. People need to heal. So to help somebody, and the first thing is safety first. If you're walking down the street and you see a homeless person, you have to think about your own safety. And we live in a strange world. Churches, schools, and Walmarts are dangerous places. So I'm not trying to paint a picture that homeless encampments. In fact, Jane, who is in the K-Town video, starts it off by saying, and she's a small young woman, a petite young woman, and she starts by saying, I've been in hundreds of homeless camps and never had a problem. But you just have to be safe. Then if you feel safe, ask the person. Jane also talks about how one time she was talking to a homeless man and he just needed eye drops. Yeah. And they were able to go provide eye drops. Now, how we end homelessness, and it's a very complex issue, but I say it in 3 easy steps. And maybe they're not so easy, but they're easy to understand.
Yeah, simplified.
Yeah. Is 1, educate yourself. So whether it's on our YouTube channel or our Learn More section or on the internet or the library, educate yourself. There's so much wrong misinformation, horrible information about homelessness, that trying to paint homeless people as monsters, which they're not. It's important to educate yourself first and educate those around you, your family, your coworkers, your church. Educate those around you. Second, we need to be politically active. So as I said, in the 80s, our Congress cut $15 billion of funding that's never been restored, that created all this. Well, if they created it, they can fix it. So we need to keep pressure on our politicians, especially at the local level and federal level. So on our website, on Get Involved, we make it easy for you to contact your state and federal legislators. But locally, I don't know what's going on in your particular area, but you do. So research, and I cannot stress how important it is. I know we often feel like, we want to go give a sandwich, do charity, and that's okay, but we have to fix what's causing homelessness. We have to prevent people from becoming homelessness. And that is through advocacy. And third, find a local nonprofit that is I'm probably the only nonprofit that will tell you to support your local nonprofits. Yes, we need help. We do good work.
Yeah, you're more like a hub of the nonprofit organizations, which is good.
In Silicon Valley, you have Destination Home, which is really a wonderful organization. And you have organizations locally that are working to end homelessness. Find one that's ending homelessness, not maintaining, and support them. So educate yourself, get politically active, and find a local nonprofit that's working to end homelessness and support them.
Yeah, speaking of politics, I think to get the politician push things forward or get things done, because they are feed on the popularity or the support from the public, right? So first, probably we should win the public opinion first, or at least educate the mass so people will know the root cause and the seriousness of the problem and the possible way to solve it. I think you are doing a great job on this, and particularly. So, do you know another YouTube channel is called Cheap RV Living, created by Bob Wells, because of this No Man Land film, right? Which won the Best Picture, Best Director, all kinds of things.
I saw it last week.
You saw him last week?
No, I saw the film last week, and I know of Bob.
What's your comment on his approach to solve similar issue?
So there's a little bit of a difference, and it's interesting because you guys are, the Silicon Valley area. It was a woman in Santa Cruz who was raising her 2 kids in a RV, was the first one that taught me about a nomadic lifestyle. She's not homeless. She is choosing to live in an RV. She could go to the bank and withdraw money and rent an apartment anytime. It's her choice. And that is the big difference. And, Nomadland kind of touched on economic disparity and lack of being able to get a job. And it really, to me, it was a little scary because I'm 60 years old and senior homelessness is growing. So the chances of me being homeless again are very real. And I often think, do I go live in a van? And so the Nomadland was very realistic in how it featured so many seniors that are now living in their vehicles. I just have to stress that true homelessness is absence of choice. And what happens is somebody loses their job and they live in their car, or they buy a van or an RV off Craigslist and they live in their van. And some people choose the lifestyle and be nomadic. Well, the real homelessness, the people that are living in their vans and RVs, don't have a choice. They're not in an RV because they want to be nomadic. They're living in an RV because the next step is sleeping on the streets or in a shelter. I think it's interesting in a way because the nomadic lifestyle is romantic in a way, and it gives a sense of freedom. It's great that there's community, but it's also a very sad statement about American society on how we treat our elderly. So I know in cultures around the world, senior citizens and elderly are revered and treated well. And here we throw them out into the desert to live in vans. And that's concerning. And that population is growing as the economy, the economic disparity continues and affordable housing crisis continues. More people have no choice but to live in a van.
So how many Asian homeless you have ever met? Because I noticed there's one video is titled something like Oakland Asian man used to be an entrepreneur or something, right? Maybe millionaire. Yeah. Tell me about that man and his. Do you have any updates on him?
Or? Oh yeah, I talked to Derek this morning. So Derek, he lives in a tent camp in Oakland.
Is he a Chinese, or what do you know?
I don't know his exact ethnic background. I just know he's a friend, and I wish he was in housing. And Derek is very articulate. He used to work for the government. He had a great job. He had lots of money. And in the '08 crash, he lost everything. And then life snowballs, where things that are bad get worse and you end up out on the streets. So Derek's actually running for Oakland mayor as a homeless person. And he is really active. He's trying to acquire property and build a tiny home community. And he works a lot helping those around him. It's really interesting that a lot of homeless people take care of their neighbors. They have to, just to survive, where you don't see that, in the suburbs. I'm here at my mom's house. I was taking care of my mom. My mom passed away. I'm trying to move back to LA. And I haven't talked to any of the neighbors in quite some time, where homeless people take care of each other. But Derek's a wonderful person. He's doing good. He's always in good spirits. For those of you that don't know, every Sunday night Eastern at 8 o'clock, 5 o'clock on West Coast time. It will change when I move to Los Angeles. We do a live stream. I don't share it on social media, but if you're one of our YouTube subscribers, you can get an alert. And it's just us talking about homelessness and anything on every Sunday night. And Derek is one of the moderators. So I have him on as a guest every night, but he is in the chat room with another formerly homeless woman every Sunday night, moderating the chat.
Yeah, he's a really articulating man. And how about the situation is we know the population census came out, right? And I think probably you noticed that as well. The population of California actually is decreasing, right? And for the first time in decades. So the thing is, lots of people live in LA. They feel like, oh, this is no longer a place inhabitable because of the homelessness issue. So they decide to move either to Texas or other places. But then if the richer people or the more so-called privileged people all move out, less people will have the capacity to support the welfare system. And the things it's kind of like deadlock now. What do you think about
So first off, I think that the people moving out because of homelessness is fear mongering and media spin. Los Angeles still has thousands of people moving into it every single day. I'm currently looking for an apartment in Los Angeles, and yes, homelessness is a crisis. But if you move to Texas, as you say, homelessness is a crisis there too.
As well.
and when I first moved to Los Angeles, one thing I noticed is, people would move there and there'd be an earthquake and maybe their car got broken into and they'd leave. So people are coming and going into Los Angeles all the time for various different reasons. For me, Los Angeles is still the most wonderful city in the world. It has a very serious homeless crisis. It has a very serious traffic problem. It has extremely high taxes. All those are things that need to be dealt with. The affordable housing crisis. I have been looking for a place to live, and I don't know what I'm going to do because every place is so expensive. So those are all reasons that people leave. This thinking that, the media, one of the things the media likes to say that homeless people are monsters and scary, especially to women. And again, as I said earlier, people have to be safe, and we live in a scary world where going into churches and schools and Walmart can be scary. But I was just in a homeless camp. In fact, Norman's video, who I posted yesterday, there was a young girl behind me, and she goes to the homeless encampment every day by herself. There's another young girl that joins her, and they go out and they bring coffee to people. It's not like this big scary thing. And yes, I'm sure there are people that are leaving Los Angeles using homelessness as an excuse. But that is not the main driver. Media is trying to spin that because people leaving Los Angeles because of homeless, and then they click on that. It's clickbait to get more ad traffic. The truth is, the census, first time people are leaving Los Angeles, let's take into account that you have a high cost of living, like in San Francisco, where rent's really high. And now I can work anywhere because of the pandemic. So you have Google and Facebook and YouTube and all these big employers that are saying, okay, you can work in North Carolina. So a lot of people left because now they can work from home. And they said, why do I stay in this expensive city? So trying to say it's homelessness isn't really the truth. I'm not saying homelessness is not a crisis, but we need to be real that people come and go into Los Angeles, into San Francisco, into San Diego all the time. It ebbs and flows, and I don't think that's ever going to change.
Thank you for saying that. I mean, I can tell by your expression, and you're even a little bit more passionate. I think there's something not true, so it kind of make you a little bit emotional. I totally understand that, and thank you for letting me get more educated about this issue. Maybe I should use more sensitive and more accurate language as well, because I'm totally ignorant about this. Like I was so surprised to see when EJ talking about in the first video, right? He talked to you about how to survive on the street, and the philosophy is basically the same as just everybody, right? Like treat people well, keep your words, and if you scratch their back, they will probably scratch your back. And it's so a common, normal life, and it make me feel so empathize and sympathize also. It's like we are all the same, and I could be him. And I think that's a very core value of your work.
Thank you for noticing. I mean, if we were all like that, and you look at what's happening in Washington, the fighting, and I mean, literally January 6th, I mean, it was a riot. And, we got to get back to this country that's not, polarized, and start working together to fix these problems that we all face. And whether you're rich or poor, this country needs to get better for all of us. I think, one of the things, and you'll see me in YouTube comments all the time, is somebody will say, well, that's a Democratic state. That's why. No, there's homelessness everywhere. And it's not a Democrat problem. It's not a Republican problem. It's our problem. It's an American problem. And we all have to work together to make our country better.
Yes. Tell me about the most offensive comments you have ever read, and why is that those comments so offensive to you?
Well, and it's not so that they're offensive. And YouTube is known for bad comments. And I got to say,
Twitter is worse. Twitter is worse.
Yeah, Twitter's become worse. It's nicer now that somebody's been off it for a while. But YouTube and everything has been known for bad comments. And I'm grateful that our community is mostly healthy. But everybody that says something, there's 20, maybe 100 people that think the same thing. So like you brought up people leaving California because of homelessness. And I'm glad you did, because then we could talk about it. So it's not that comments offend me, and sometimes they do, but it's an opportunity to educate. So the videos themselves just start a conversation.
Exactly.
And that's what we're having now. This whole interview came about because somebody in your newsroom or a producer or somebody saw our videos. Exactly. And here we are having a conversation that's educating people. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you. Tell me more about your team. Like how many people are working for you? And you mentioned so many things, right? Like you had push a news notification to people, and you do this and that. Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah. So I told the first half of the story, so I'll tell the start at the second half. In 2008, I lost everything again except my sobriety. And I was around 19 months of unemployment, not consecutively. I'd get a job and get laid off and get a job and get laid off. And I was very scared about hitting homelessness a second time. So I grabbed the camera and I went out and I started interviewing homeless people. And I want to tell you, it's because I wanted to make our world a better place. But the truth was, I was just giving myself a reason to get up in the morning. And then it took off. All of you started supporting Invisible People's work. To the point where housing programs have been created, and it's just been amazing. So for the most of Invisible People, because what we're doing is so cutting edge, philanthropy in the homeless sector, they didn't see it and others didn't see it. It was really hard to create revenue. But then about 2 years ago, thanks to Patreon and thanks to a couple of individual donors, we were able to get some capacity building funds. So that's 2 years ago. 3 years ago is when we started journalism. If you go to invisiblepeople.tv/2020 research, we did research last year on what America believes about homelessness. We asked 2,500 people in 16 different cities. So again, it's /2020 research. And you'll see the number one is people will go down the tenderloin and they'll see somebody with mental illness and they think all homeless people are that way. It's not so. The other is local news, is they get their information from news. So we started a journalism initiative. We have 68 writers. 17 of them are full-time writers, meaning they contribute regularly. Several of them are homeless. We pay homeless writers and people that are currently homeless to write for us. And so right now it's just me and a managing editor. She's wonderful. And she takes care of all the journalism. But we also do mini documentaries. I highly recommend looking at our YouTube page at the top. We have a producer that works with me named Alex. And we just started doing scripted movies. You mentioned Nomadland. We have a scripted film coming out with a woman that was evicted and that ended up living in her car. And we're working with a wonderful woman named Luciana to make all that happen. But right now, it's just me. Today is my first payday. I worked 12 years. 4,545 days without pay. So I'm not going to do the hourly on that. But we just hired our first staff, me, and we're going to hire 2 more people. And really, Invisible People is just at the beginning. We're just beginning to scale our impact. And it's more important now than when I first started.
Wow, it's been a long time. I mean, what kept you moving? What kept you doing this? I mean, maybe 8 years ago when you interviewed EJ, I don't think you ever think it can blow up like this. It can create such an impact on society. And talk more about this filming philosophy. I mean, being a documentary filmmaker myself, I know it's always we are stuck in a kind of ethic difficulty, right? How we can either be faithful to tell a story, but also be sensitive not to let them feel exploited. How did you carry this out, and how do you usually establish this trust between you and the interviewees?
Yeah, totally a great question. And Invisible People at our foundation is everybody should be treated the same. And if we go through a day and somebody is hurt, we're doing something wrong. So to first answer your question, why do I keep on doing this?
Yes.
Well, if I had kids, I'm divorced. If I had kids, none of this would exist because I wouldn't have been able to work 12 years without income. And I would get gigs consulting. My background is marketing, or I would get a speaking gig. And that's how last year I grossed $6,000 the total. And that is how I've lived for 12 years. And the reason is that this work is important. And just because the people that control the money don't see how important this work is, doesn't mean that it's not important. People like you see the value in this work. As a documentary filmmaker, which I guess you could say I am,
you are.
I believe strongly that documentary films should observe and not change what is going on. And for example, the channel video on our YouTube is a PBS documentary about me. And the movie producers were so upset with me because they would stop me and say, would you walk in again? We want to get better light. And I'm like, no. I mean, you capture what's going on. We shouldn't interfere with what's going on. So the first Invisible People videos, which we do today, like Norman's that we put up yesterday, are raw, unedited. That is intentional now, but at first it was a mistake. And what it was is my laptop at the time couldn't edit video. I almost didn't even do this. I'm a TV producer by trade, and, video has to have music, has to have B-roll. Yeah. And so I almost didn't do it. And one day I said, you know what, I'm going to just upload this. And that was the magic. Authenticity has replaced production value. But here is how we make sure nobody gets exploited, as you say. So each homeless person retains the rights to their video. So even EJ's video or any video, if they want it taken down, I take it down. It's raw, unedited. That means that their story is not spun for anything except what they intended to. Now, out of over 1,000 interviews, only 3 people have ever asked for it to be taken down. Now, I hand everybody a card with my information on it, my cell phone number. And on the back, we have an online support group for homeless people, and it's a link for them to get in touch with us. And I also explain to them, because homeless people lose stuff a lot just by the nature of homelessness, how they can find me if they lose the card. So that if they ever, life changes, and someday you might say, well, I don't want to be on YouTube as a homeless person, I remove it. So now when we do mini documentaries where I have to ask somebody for their rights, so you'll get this because you said you also produce documentary films, we ask people for a model release. Well, that's like a prenup agreement. It's saying, I'm the photographer, I control everything.
Yeah, it's like a release form. We usually just let them sign that.
Right. So with Invisible People, there's no release form because that changes the power structure. Wow. They have the rights to their story. So nobody's being exploited. There's no ads on them. I mean, we could make YouTube, because of the amount of views, if we put ads on, we would have a huge revenue stream, but it wouldn't be right. And so we don't. That's what sets Invisible People apart. But like with Theo, who is the homeless man with the podcast, we did the mini interview on, because it's edited, I have to ask him for a model release. Well, I pay them. So whenever I talk, or whenever we ask a homeless person to sign a release, we pay them, we compensate them.
Wow, that's a lot lots of information over there. I didn't expect that, but it's lots of thinking behind these decisions. I can tell because, yeah, what you do actually is really noble from what I understand, and to give up the monetization of the possible revenue, and wow, that's I'm so glad to hear this.
Yeah. Well, so if I was able to, let's say, revenue share with the person, I would gladly put an ad on it and then be able to send them a check. But the way homelessness is, I'm not able to do that. So just to be right and fair, I don't put ads on any interview videos because it wouldn't be right for me to make money off their story. And they own their story. It's still their story.
But what's wrong with that if those things go to your nonprofit and because of your mission and your cause?
I get it. I get it. But
you mean ownership is like inseparable, right? That's a potential problem.
It's an integrity thing. Every time I interview a homeless people, you're asking, how do I build trust? So I let them know, this is your story. There's going to be no fundraising from it. It's not going to be edited. So whatever you say is going to be authentically what you say. I can't spin it for my agenda.
Wow.
It's your agenda. And if you ever want it removed, I remove it. So I make them that promise that there's going to be no monetization, no ads on it. And I keep that promise. And for me, there's other ways to monetize. There's a wonderful man that gave